fast as lightning. And a little bit frightening. Oh, they had excellent timing. There was funky China man in a funky Chinatown. And there was little Bubby. She was on my show now. Hi. Welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host with the most, Darius Mirshahzadeh. And today we have the most specialist of special guests, the one, the only, Lauden Davis. You guys don't know that their middle name is Bubby. I do. Woo!
It's not.
Welcome to the show, Lauden.
Hi.
Hey, FYI, everybody, we're not calling her Lauden the rest of the show. Her name's Bubby for the rest of the show, and we'll get into what that is in a moment.
Thanks. That's professional. It's my professional name.
That's your stage name. That's her pen name. Bubby, welcome to the show.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
I'm so pumped to have you. Give me a second here. I want to tell the crowd some of the ground rules because we have a lot of rules here. I want to make sure that this is the most professional 30 minutes of their day.
Okay.
I mean, least professional.
Straight from Bubby and Darius.
This is the equivalent of doing a Zoom call in the bathroom, as far as I'm concerned. So, guys, the format of the show is simple. We're bringing together change makers from around the world who have lived their passions to create greatness around them. And Bubby's no short of greatness, nor is she no short of passion. So a couple of things to know about live streaming. We are live. Start a watch party. Ask us questions. And you're going to be asking us a ton of questions because this is probably the one of the few chances you're going to get dirt on myself. And also to learn from a really amazing person in Lauden, Bubby McBubbovich.
The married name.
Davis. You have my team standing by. So they are ready to accept your instant messages, ask us questions, like our comments, all of the above. We'll be stopping to answer those questions throughout the show. But before we go there, I did want to ask you a question, Lauden. So first of all, before I ask the question, I do want to let you guys know. So Lauden is a very, very special guest. She's an amazing fashion designer / integral designer. She's a mother. She has 2 amazing children. She's a wife. She's an amazing husband. And she's really doing some cool things in the world and has been for a long time. So we're going to be really talking about a lot of things around the design world, being a mom during COVID, and really just some of your thoughts on what you're seeing out there with a lot of people. You know, you have a lot of friends who are kind of living through this time period, and I wanted to kind of dive deep into, what is it like to be a working mom and to, have young kids and to be really having a career that is a cool career, but doing it in a work from home environment and all those things. Does that work for you?
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
Sure.
Did I miss anything why don't you give the audience a little bit of background on yourself? Like how did you get into design? How did you get into fashion? I know you're kind of pivoting right now and looking at other areas of the design world outside of fashion, but how, give the audience some background on yourself.
Yeah, I grew up in Southern California. I'm your sister.
Oh, damn it. That was the fucking reveal. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
I had a reveal.
You didn't tell me.
She's my sister too, which is probably we're talking about the Greatness Machine here, which I named after myself. But no, I'm just joking. She is my sister, which I
didn't know. I'm sorry you didn't tell me. You gotta tell me.
I know. I was gonna say it during the intro, but then
our faces look so much alike.
Hey, you look a lot like your guest today, Darius. What's up with that? Oh, I don't know. It's just a coincidence. No. My sister, I was going to say she's the mother of my niece and nephew, who I love.
Oh, so
anyway, we don't need to go there yet. Go ahead.
Okay, so I grew up in Southern California. And it's funny, I didn't even realize this until now. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but I always have been interested in design. And, we grew up in the suburbs. And I realized that I always missed, I always was like, I always like really loved houses that like craftsmen and like houses that had like character and all that stuff. And I realized that like I had none of that in the suburbs. Like, and I didn't even realize that I would always longing to like go see those houses and wondering what they were like inside, and just like, and I realized when I was talking to Jared, because you know we're kind of like thinking about expanding, getting a bigger house, and we're like, as an adult, we've just never, when we had to pick ourselves, we always pick houses with character, because it's just something, I guess the design was always inside, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so yeah, so I grew up in Southern California and always was into design, always was really into clothes and sewing, and learned all that stuff, like as far as like sewing, all that stuff from our grandma. And always drew fashion illustrations. I mean, I have them from when I was like 9. Even before that, before I could draw, I would have mom draw and put her, tell her what to put on the girls, basically. And so I've always been into fashion. And yeah, so then through like process of trial and error, eventually went to design school in New York. And
come on, don't be that girl. Don't be that. I love people from like, where did you go to school? I went to a small little college in Boston. What was the name of it? Harvard. It's like, yeah, dick. Say where you went to school. Come on, that's an important part of the story. Where was the little design school in New York you went to?
I went to Parsons in New York.
Yeah, I went to Parsons. Which one? Not Parsons. Parsons.
Parsons in New York.
Harvard. It's the Harvard of freaking fashion design. That's where Tim Gunn's like, oh, fabulous. Yeah, doesn't Tim Gunn do the show there, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he was actually director the first year I was there, but then after that, he got so big on Fashion Runway, he left. And, you know, I think he became like the head of Liz Claiborne or something after that. And then, you know, anyways.
A little company called Liz Claiborne. Liz Claiborne.
I actually don't think they're around anymore, but back then they were pretty big. So yeah, so then I interned there, and then eventually got my first job out in LA, moved out to LA, and I was at True Religion. And then from there, worked for a couple other brands, O'Neill, another small company in LA. And yeah, just kind of been in the fashion world ever since I graduated school. And that was about 10 years ago. Even before then, I transferred around a lot, but once I settled, I got.
And so, I'm sure our audience wants to know, like, what do you love about being in the fashion world, and why are you considering leaving it? I mean, there's a lot of, when you ask like I always ask people, like, when you're 10 years old, what do you want to be? This is like one of my favorite questions to ask people. The purpose of it is to prove to most of them that they never get to do their quote unquote dream job.
Yeah.
And they always say like, I want to be a baseball player. I want to be a soccer player. I want to be, president of the United States. I want to be an actor. I will from time to time have people say, I want to be a fashion designer. Right. And so my guess is what, if I'd asked you when you were 10, what would you have said? Oh,
I would have said fashion designer.
Right. So this is actually an interesting conversation. You're one of the few people, and I'm telling you, I've done this with like 1,000 people, and out of the thousands, like 3 people said like they were doing the job. By the way, the job was, I was running a mortgage company. So like, it wasn't that they did their dream job. It's that they did the job that their mom was doing, that they wanted to be just like their mom. Right. They like, there's no 9-year-old in America that's like, can't wait to be a freaking loan processor. But if their mom was, maybe, right. I could see that because they want to be like their mom, or their dad worked at a bank or something. I could see that. I want to be just like my dad,
Yeah.
But like, you're probably one of 1,000 people, that's a pretty rare thing to actually do what you wanted to do when you were 10 years old. So if you could give your 10-year-old self advice about her lofty and it was I would have had a front row seat to you going through fashion school. I mean, look, let me just tell you guys a story here. My sister was almost done with college, and she started over to go to Parsons. Like, let it be like your junior year of college. It's like, hey, you want to go do this thing that you're interested in for your dream job, this dream career that you wanted since you were, watching My Little Pony and, playing Barbies. Yeah. How do I do it? Oh, it's easy. You just got to start over and start college over as a freshman when you're going to be a senior and move to New York. And like literally you did that, right? Which is insanity. And I definitely pushed you to do it. So
yeah, I was gonna say, well, but it's not that you pushed me to do it, it's that you made a good point. And your point was, listen, like I was in fashion school. I wasn't, I could have went and just stayed another year at the school I was at and graduated, but I think you saw, and you and Mom saw talent in me that I didn't see, and I think you, and what you did gave me a lot of opportunity, or not, opened my door. You said, hey, like you can do this here, but you can also do this in New York and push yourself that much more. And it's really has, I have that on my resume now. I learned so much more. I was able to get internships. I just called up like brands that are huge now to be like, hey, I want to be your intern. And they were like, okay, come on, and now there's like, days and days of processes to even get in through their doors. But I think you guys like helped me realize that, it was worth it. I was young. I was 22, 21. I was 21. Like, what else was I doing? You know what I mean?
true,
Like
true.
I could have went and started my career, but then, I was done by 25 and I started it then. And I moved so quickly through it because you're 25 and you're much more mature than a 22-year-old, or I was 26 probably actually. So I'm pushed through it really quickly. You know what I mean? So I wasn't behind in the industry once I got in it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I have a lot of opinions around having 18-year-olds, myself included, making decisions that are going to shape the next 20 years of their life. It's like you go to college when you're 18 to go figure out what you want to do with the next 20 years of your life.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a farce and it's kind of bullshit. And to your point, like it wasn't wasted time. You got to focus on, you were more mature. B, you got there and you pounded through, you pounded through the work because you were serious about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then C, you had more direction so you could come out of that. And dude, you came out in 2010, which was like the worst economic meltdown in probably 50 years.
I feel so bad for the kids coming out of college now. I'm like, oh,
I don't feel bad for any of them. I had to walk through
Zoomers.
Yeah, those millennials, they've been getting participation trophies for decades now. It's good for them to pay their freaking dues. Hey, all you millennials out there, you guys haven't heard me bash on millennials yet, but I love it. It's my favorite. Gen Z, I'm not even there. I haven't even gotten to you guys yet. You guys go put on your Bape or buy your shit on X whatever, stock. That's a show for another time. I know you're a millennial, Bubs, but I'm gonna have a show. I was actually thinking about doing a show. I'm not kidding. And you guys you guys will know who I'm talking about. You Gen Zers who I'm thinking of right now. I was like, I'm gonna get like 3 Gen Zers on my show and just fuck with them for like an hour. It'll be like Darius torturing Gen Z.
Oh God, that sounds wonderful.
Then I'll have a surprise appearance from a millennial that'll like double down on the shit talking. No, I'm half joking. I am really gonna do it, but I'll be. So no, if you could go in a time machine, and you flew back to 1994, 95, 96, something like that. Besides warning the world of Donald Trump's game show hosts would propel him to stardom in a way different way, what else would you what other advice would you give yourself?
Well, I think the thing is, like you said, when you're a little kid, you ask what you want to be, and you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, you want to be there's like these set careers that you don't know about. User experience designers, you don't know about like, animation creative directors. You don't know about these things that are like, oh, like you just, and at that point, there was no internet, there was no YouTube, there was no like, oh, like people are doing this kind of thing and people are doing that. You had no exposure to it. So I liked fashion, so I went into fashion. But when I was in Parsons, I was starting to see this, that like people were talking about like web development and user experience and all, and just different, I keep saying that, but there's other kinds of designs out there. But just for example, that I had I was like, what are you talking about? How people, I didn't even know what a nap was when I was in college. You know what I mean? So I was like what what is that? You know, and so I didn't know that there was this whole like internet design. You know, there's so many different facets of design where you just don't know about it because you're like, oh, you know, clothes because everyone wears them. You know what I mean? And at that point, that's what there were. You just weren't exposed, or at least I wasn't exposed to all the different kinds of facets of design. Um, so yeah, I think that's a big thing about like going back and looking at like what 10-year-old was thinking. It's just your exposure is limited. And if you don't grow up in a really like progressive, like New York design household, you know, it's hard to like think forward in design without the training too, you know, because I was really trained to be like a forward designer. That's what I learned in school was how to push this forward, what else is out there, what else can be designed, and you know, and so that's just kind of like, I guess I would say keep your mind open, you know.
That's good.
Yeah.
You're way nicer to yourself than I was to myself.
Get a job that pays way more money.
Yeah, I mean, like, listen, man. The whole world's filled with naysayers, Mirshahzadeh. You need to buck up and tell them to fuck off. Okay. I swear to God, don't listen to the naysayers. That's my advice to 10-year-old Darius. So we have a question that came from the group. And by the way, guys, we are live. Ask questions. This is my sister. You will probably not be able to ask questions of me that I will answer as honest as she will. I will always I will use lots of hyperbole to make myself look good.
Always.
So the question is, what was the toughest lesson you had to learn during your career?
God. Okay, so coming out of New York into the surf industry, that was a hard learning lesson. You know, I really had to like put New York me on hold, you know, and it's much more like, God, it's a much like, you can't, you know, you have to be kind of a yes man, you know, and you kind of have to put your, yeah, I'm just trying to say this nicely.
Listen, this is the greatest machine. Quit filtering yourself.
This is what I learned at surf industry, is to filter yourself.
Well, listen, if you want to listen, I have a rule on my show: no filter. So just say, well,
it's a much more Southern California is a much more passive aggressive culture. People sugarcoat; they don't tell you what they're saying, what they mean, and that was really hard for me. That was a hard lesson. Was people can think one thing and say another, and they'll say another to you and then say something different to other people. And so then you'll go after a meeting and somebody might not have liked what you said, but they'll never say it to you. They'll say it to, you know, your manager and your manager's manager. And you're like, but 3 weeks later you hear, oh, you didn't, I had no idea. I thought, you know, like I thought that was fine. And you just never hear it until down the line. So it was hard for me to realize that like sugarcoating can be a big part of the culture. You know?
Can I ask a question though? Do you think that is a Southern California issue, or do you think that's a core value issue for a specific employer?
I think it's both. I think for that employer, it's a core value. I think it's also fostered by the Southern California culture. I think that they're in Southern California, by living in both places, LA and New York. I feel like there's like a definite, like, say it to your face, New York. You know what I mean? And
that's a cultural issue
cultural thing, you know, like, cities. And it's just a thicker skin. And I like that. And that works well with me. That works well with my core values. That's, you know, I'll never say anything that behind your back that I wouldn't say to your face. You know what I mean? And maybe that's I think for that corporation, that was the culture. I think you're very right, you know?
So what I just heard you say is pick it, like, and makes sense. You want your values to be aligned with where you live. You want your values to be aligned with where you work, and don't just assume that every place is the same. I mean, I would never think that LA and New York are going to be that different values wise, but to your point, like they are, right? And I think, look, every city has a different mindset, right? If you go to San Francisco versus New York versus LA versus Austin, Texas, And besides that, you could nuke the rest of the country. No, I'm just messing. Um, but no, but seriously, cities have a ethos to them, as do, and companies do. You can't, and maybe you can't necessarily like. And there's different ethos that matter more in different environments. Like I like Southern California culture for a lot of reasons, and there's stuff about it I don't like. I like LA culture better than Orange County culture for a ton of reasons. You know,
and I agree. Working in LA and working in Orange County, they're two separate cultures, and that's very apparent. You can very much see it. I did not experience that in LA when I experienced that in Orange County. You know, I did not experience that in New York when I experienced that in Orange County. You know what I mean? So that was kind of like
eye-opening.
Yeah, it really was like, and also wanting to work like really focusing now, like, okay, like you're right. Like I want to work somewhere where I can speak my mind and not feel that, because it was never like aggressive. It was just like speaking my mind. No, I don't think that that looks great. I think that, you know, if you add this and that and this, you know, thinking that was okay, feeling safe, I think is a big,
yeah, well,
you know, in design you have to be safe, because otherwise you edit, right? You edit yourself, you edit your design, and you never get that wonderful design, because you're always editing before you even designed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I think in the arts, it's really obvious when you see people do that. And fashion's an expression of culture. Fashion is an expression of what's happening in, you know, artistically and creatively in the world. And so like there's a pretty big difference between what's happening on the runways in Milan versus the stacks of clothing in Costco, right?
Yeah.
One, I think those are like really two ends of the spectrum, right? One is like unadulterated creativity, and one is like muted and as edited as you possibly can so that the masses will consume. But when you're trying to design anything, whether it's a business or whether, to your point, it's a product, I think that there's something, what I'm hearing you say is like, as a designer, you have to feel safe to be able to give your best self.
Yeah.
And what's funny when I hear you say that is I actually firmly believe that to be the truth in any job is if you want people's best selves to show up, they have to feel safe, right?
Yeah.
And to your point though, if you want to live in an environment, you got to make sure you're picking jobs and environments and cities where the culture of the personalities is in line with yours, so that you have that comfort to feel like trust and safety, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, and so you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs? So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a psychological assessment of around what makes us like be our best, right? And so Maslow is, I mean, I love Maslow. Maslow is essentially like, how do you get people, when you get, the first thing you need to do is satisfy people's survival needs if you want them to feel safe, right? So I got to make sure you have a roof over your head, you have food that you can eat, because if you're worried about that stuff, you're not feeling safe and you're not gonna be able to move up to the next level, which is success, right? So once you feel like, once I take care of your like shelter and food and healthcare needs and stuff like that, people's minds start to wander. They're like, man, I really wish I could be, you know, X, Y, and Z in my career, right? Like you're not worried about like being the number one neurosurgeon if you can't feed your family and you're dying of hunger and squander, right? Like you're really having that concern around what you're going to specialize in med school if you haven't eaten in a week, right? You're going to go worry about eating. So once you've satisfied the bottom level of the hierarchy of needs, then people start to satisfy success. But the highest level, because once you see this all too often, and I would argue that you're an example of this. You've been successful now, right? So once people start to get comfortable with being successful, then they may not feel like they're living their truth or living their passions. And that's what he calls self-actualization. That's the highest level of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, but in order to move up there, you have to feel safety and survival. Then you feel safety and success. And then people feel like they can reach to the highest level, which is self-actualization, which is where you're living your calling. That's where you wake up in the morning, your heart sings, you're stoked, you're pumped, you're energized, time flies, you're engaged. But you got to move through the different hierarchies to get there. And so I would argue right now you're moving from that success to self-actualization part of the hierarchy, and that's a big part of that from what you just said is there has to be core value alignment.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. 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 And I think that's a hard thing to find in companies. It's hard to like find that company that like you just line up with. And I think that's why a lot of people go and start their own company, or go and like I did, and start consulting and just go into like, okay, like if every company I've been at, like, okay, it's, you're always kind of like, and you start like getting better, but eventually you're like, the way I'm going to do this is like either like opening myself up. So taking a step back and trying to like what I've been doing is just kind of going into companies and seeing and giving my opinions, and they pay me for my opinions. And then like, I kind of take a step back and, and like see how they move in with that. And I think that, I think it's a hard thing to find a company that you align with, that really like propels you to, and makes your heart sing,
Yeah, well, it is hard, and the best companies figure out how to do it. And I mean, and my book is essentially all about that. It's all about being authentic and being honest, and using that in the process of hiring people. Chapter 7 in my book is literally like, how do you do core value recruiting? Because at the end of the day, if I'm running a company, I'm CEO, I want Lauden to show up and her values to be aligned with my company, because I want to like crush it, because she's super engaged and she's self-actualizing. And I know that she can't do that if I have someone that is not eye to eye with the way we are as an organization. So like I don't want to keep talking about my book. I mean, I love talking about my book. please, Lauden, like we got to stop talking about my book. I mean,
stop.
Please. I mean, this is too much. It's too much. We do have another question for you though. Do you have advice for someone who may be on a journey to discover their passion? How could they begin to gain exposure to their areas of interest?
Well, I like how I did it is I mean, it depends on like what, where you are in your life, but I was young enough where I could intern a lot, which I know is a privilege. That's a big thing. We're like working for free. I also like worked, but I also did internships a day or two a week. And that really helped me see if it was an industry that I wanted to be in. And I did. I could see myself working in those environments when I was there, and I could see myself being a designer. And that really helped me. Even before I was in fashion school, I would intern at like small, like sewing. There was like this place called Stitch in San Francisco where they would teach people how to sew on sewing machines. And one little step, I would help them on the weekends, and they would pay me by, per class I taught or whatever. Or buy me lunch, and again, I was privileged to be able to do that. So that's one way if you can. If you can't, then reach out on LinkedIn. Like that's what I've been doing right now. It's kind of like reaching out to people on LinkedIn and programs that I think are cool, or jobs that I think are like interesting, and asking them how they got there, and what they've been doing, and I ask them like what their dream job is. And, I just kind of like get into the minds of the people who have the jobs I think that I'm interested in, or, just kind of like now that I'm trying to open myself up again, but yeah. And like for me, like, since I was really wanting to go into design, I took a lot of art classes. And before I even went to art school, I would take like community college courses and stuff like that. Before I went to art school, I went to community college for a year, and I took a course. And community college is cheap, right? I think then it was like $300 a semester, and I took a course in everything I thought was interesting, and that really helped me narrow it down, and really helped me again realize what I excelled in and what I didn't. And those would be my thoughts.
Such good advice. I love it. Yeah, no, it really no, it is good advice. I'll tell you, I didn't do any of that stuff, and I should have. I went the other route, which was get me in. I got in and out of college as quickly as I could. I majored in the one thing that our parents would not criticize me for majoring in, business. And then I got the fuck out of there and started working and became an entrepreneur as fast as I could. And looking back, I didn't explore my passions. I was all focused on making money, which is, like hindsight's 2020. I was very money motivated, but like, I think that if you have the opportunity to create like that if you have the opportunity to create space for yourself to do that, I think you're giving great advice, which is, look, like, go work 3 hours a week volunteering in an area you're interested in, even if you are working a bunch of other jobs. Because the one thing that I think most people squander is their time when they're that young. They party, they blow their money going out. I mean, dude, I had 7 jobs when I was 22 years old because I was hustling, grinding, right? And so, but my thoughts are that if you, and I really, really cared about building businesses, and and one could argue that was me following my passions then, which I was very focused on building a business, being money motivated, and I did those things. But but to your point,
I would say that's what you were like passionate about that, and I think that's okay too. For me, I never was money motivated, which is another issue, right? Like, where you're like, well, I don't care how much money I make. I'm just going to do what I love, because that's how I can live. And I felt that way. Like, I was like, I couldn't picture myself doing anything else. I was like, the only thing I can ever picture myself doing is design. Like, and so then at that point, I'm like, well, that's the only thing I can do. I don't, and not that I didn't care how much money I make, but I had no option. You know what I mean? Like, there was no option for me,
I joke that I'm unemployable, right? So like, that's how you go into something that's totally out there. But to your point, I think the takeaway I heard is, follow your passions and don't, I saw what you did. You went to college, then you went back to junior college, and it took you way longer than a bunch of other people who rushed through to either start working. And dude, you grinded for a long time. So most people don't realize that, okay, to be 10 years in the fashion industry as a designer for notable brands, like the 10 years that well, maybe not 10 years, but maybe the 5 years of 6 years prior to that, what you did to even get to that point.
Discover that.
To discover it. So
because, I came out of it, like, we had there was some pretty traumatic stuff that happened as a teenager. My dad died, mom got sick with cancer. So it was, that was all before I was 18, between the ages of 12 and 18, when I was in high school and junior high, I had a dad who was seriously ill. I had a mom who was going through a lot and then got cancer. So I came out of that pretty traumatized, and I don't even so I needed space to come back to earth. You know what I mean? Like, come back to oh yeah, I'm a teenager and I'm a 19-year-old trying to create a life. Yeah. And it was, or, at that point I was 21, and I popped kind of back out of it. Here, I'm back here. I'm out of depression. I'm out, you know what I mean? So it's just different for everybody, that time in your life, you were already graduated from college. You were already into college, so you came out of that all right, well, I see how life is. I need to make money and I need to do it fast, so it was just, we experienced similar things, but very differently,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But we do have sorry, go ahead.
What are you gonna say?
I was gonna say that we do have one thing in common.
Mikey?
No, Mikey's not allowed on the show for a while. For those of you that don't know, I have a twin brother. Yeah, he's the other guy in that picture over there. He's the guy that the more white kid in that picture.
He's the one that won't be listening to this.
Yeah, I don't see him listening to this. He's probably sleeping right now. So no, we have one thing in common. If I could go back in a time machine, you know what I would do?
What?
I would go back to a more simple time than we live in today. A time back in 1987 that I'd like to share with you all right now. Would you guys like to listen to this time? Well, so in 1987, my sister was 3 years old, and we I was her older brother. I'm 6 years older, so I was about 9. And there was this really special song, if you will, that we both enjoyed. So I want to play it for you because it's really special. It means a lot to us. You ready, Lauden?
Okay.
You've been saving all your nickels and dimes.
Gonna show someone a real good time. Come on, little sister. You're coming with me. My little sister, come and have a ball.
You're not supposed to eat the ball.
You can have it all. Pizza, rides, games, and more. You got the highest score.
For a kid to be a kid.
I went. That's called Cindy and Me, just in case you ever want to Google it. I was bummed. Was that loud enough? Could you hear it?
I can hear it.
Yeah, I was like, I'm like, should I start with the Cindy and Me Chuck E. Cheese song, or should I end with it? By the way, for those of you that don't do that, I call my sister up and sing her that song probably at least once a month, and I'm 42 years old.
At least. And I'll be like kids screaming, cooking dinner, and you're singing me the Chuck E. Cheese song.
Come on, little Bobby, come have a ball.
I'm like, what do you want?
The ball. Dude, my wife and my kids sing her the song. That's how much it is. Okay, I got a 6-year-old that sings a song from 1987, a 30-second Cindy and Me spot from Chuck E. Cheese to her aunt.
To his aunt. Oh God!
Near the end of the show here, Bubs. Any questions or any thoughts that you'd like to impart on our viewers? Any questions you want to ask me? Since I'm your big bro.
Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good do you think you are at podcasting?
Fuck, 20. I'm like, probably a 9.8.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I have to quit interrupting. That's the only thing I'm working on.
Well, I think you're a 10.
Oh, thank you. Hey, Bubs, where can everyone find you if they're looking for designers or someone to do some amazing design work, or someone to talk to about them going to fashion in the fashion industry? Where can they find you?
You can just check out my website. It's Lauden Davis, Lauden Lauden Davis at gmail.com, laudendavis.com.
Yeah, so you guys, there'll be some notes in the feed there. You can go to laudendavis.com. And guys, listen, follow us on The Real Darius M at Facebook. You can go to the website and sign up, and we're putting a bunch of content on there. That's at therealdarius.com. And we're on all the other social media schmigga-to-dos. Although I do on TikTok, it's The Darius Show. And I'm still trying to infiltrate that social network. My friend's like, that's your identity is being stolen. And I'm like,
your identity is being stolen at every moment of your life.
Whatevs.
I'm so tired of hearing about it.
Yeah. I'm like, whatevs. I don't care. I'm like,
whatever.
I'm like, whatevs. Like, unless I'm going to go live off the grids.
No, I know. I love when people post on Instagram that your identity is being stolen on something else. I'm like, literally, your identity is being stolen on Instagram.
I mean, look, I do really dig on the Russian / Zimbabwe scammers who put up the questionnaire. It's like, learn how you're smart. And they're like, answer the question. It's like, what is your mother's maiden name? What street did you grow up on? Oh, God.
What's your first pet?
Yeah, what's your first pet's name? What was the name of your first job? And then it's like, press enter. You are so smart. I'm like, dude, that's genius. That is, I mean, I'm a big fan of 2 things in this world, 3 things. Telemarketers, the guys doing that shit in Zimbabwe, and or Russia, or whatever third world, second world, nation that's our info. And last but not least, ClickFunnels, where they get you to sign up and then they spam the hell out of your inbox. Those 3 things, they make me happy. I know I'm weird. What can I say? I'm a strange dude. So anyway, guys, Bubby, I love you.
Thank you. Love you too.
So grateful you're on the show. Thank you. Mom, if you're watching. Oh, hey, Mom, if you're watching, can you ask the girls in the chat room which kid you love most?
Mom wants to know when she's going to be on the podcast.
My mom's going to be on.
She'll talk about spaghetti sauce, she said.
My mom makes some fucking good spaghetti sauce.
She really does.
Rich is, my best friend's going to be on a show in August, which is awesome because he's a teacher, and I want to ask him all about how fucked up it is to be a teacher right now. But dude, Rich will tell you, mom's spaghetti sauce is bomb. I was going to start a spaghetti and meatball shop in San Francisco called S&M's. And it was going to be
It would have worked because her name's Susan Mirshahzadeh.
I know, but it was going to be a straight up sadomasochistic theme. And it was going to, I thought
there's still time.
Listen, if there's anyone looking out there to back a good idea, S&M spaghetti.
It's the best spaghetti meatballs you'll ever have.
And on the jar would be like this like woman putting a gag ball in the guy's mouth with like a whip. And it'll be
the gag ball will be a meatball. And the whip is spaghetti.
And I'll sell dude. Hey, we got it. This is happening. Everybody, S&M's, get it in a store near you. And we're gonna do whipping some dude with a gag and meatball in his mouth. Everyone, we love you. Hey, I got Rida Hamida coming on this evening, and looking forward to talking some shop with her. She was on Dr. Phil, dropping knowledge on some racist beauty queen. I can't wait.
Awesome.
That. Anyway, grateful, Bubby. I love you.
All right, I'll see you later. Thank you.